Several of you have asked us what the federal parties are promising for LGBTQ Canadians. I'll be speaking with three activists from that community in just a moment. But first, here's a snapshot of the party policies. The Liberals are promising funding of $10 million a year over 3 years for LGBTQ organizations. They will also change the criminal code to ban conversion therapy, which aims to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity to traditional male-female roles. The Liberals are recommitting to end the blood donation ban against men who have sex with other men. That's a promise they already made in 2015. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says that he will introduce laws that protect LGBTQ Canadians, although he wasn't specific on what kind of laws. The Conservatives say they would give the community the same rights as everyone else when it comes to donating blood and would take the advice of the medical community. Scheer won't march in pride parades, but he says he supports the rights of all Canadians, including those who are LGBTQ. The NDP is also promising to end the ban on blood, but it's also promising to improve access to gender-confirming surgery and making sure the costs are covered by public health care plans. The Greens would also end the blood ban and are promising access to gender-affirming health services such as hormones, blockers, and surgery. They also say they'll ensure the national census is reflective of gender identity and require accessible facilities in all federal buildings. For more on LGBTQ issues, we have three guests, starting in Ottawa. Faye Johnstone, a trans activist. Also in Ottawa, Yusuf Chelik, a gay Muslim activist. And in Montreal, Corinne Mirgiani, Jean-Francois, who works with members of minorities. Welcome to all of you.
Hello.
Let me start here, because I want to ask each of you what are the most important issues to you during this election campaign or otherwise? So Faye, let me start with you. What are the most important issues for you?
I think when I connect with communities, I hear a big push for more work on housing and homelessness for trans and LGBTQ young folks. But more than anything else, I think folks want a conversation. Our leaders haven't spoken about this issue almost at all, and we need them to speak up on LGBTQ issues and really articulate what their policy priorities are, because they haven't done that. Yusuf,
how about you?
For me, one of the main priority is that over 72 countries committing sexual genocide against LGBTQ communities, and we do not have a strong foreign policies that condemning those countries. And I would like to see LGBTQ agenda included and incorporated our foreign agenda a bit more.
Okay. Corinne, how about you?
I think that for me, the most important thing is to think of the most marginalized members of our community. So a little bit like Faith said, about like trans youth who are often homeless, but it's also about the most marginalized people in our communities, whether they're refugees as well or claiming asylum at this moment. It's really hard for them to be recognized as being members of our communities.
Okay. How do you think that the parties have done in addressing your issues? Faye?
You know, I think 4 years ago this might have been decent, but it's 2019 and we have the Conservatives who haven't actually done anything or said anything on LGBTQ issues. We have the Liberals who, you know, they've said some good stuff, but they also didn't end the blood ban. I think the NDP and the Greens have some really ambitious pieces in their policies or in their platforms, but they need to really step up. We have a Conservative, a People's Party of Canada that wants to repeal trans rights in this country, and they need to talk about that and demonstrate not just how they are opposed to what Bernier is doing, but how they're a different option that will actually help us move forward as a country and make it so LGBTQ folks in all of our diversity are welcome and have access to fundamental rights and safety, which is so often denied to us.
Okay. Yusuf, what do you think? How have the parties included LGBTQ rights within their platforms?
As I mentioned, my main concern is LGBTQ community members that are facing persecution in their own countries, especially in Muslim majority countries. Unfortunately, Liberals have failed us in one agenda when they brought back ISIS members and trying to reintegrate those people to Canadian society, it is putting fear in LGBTQ Muslim activists. We are afraid of our well-being. So we understand they have constitutional rights, but constitutional rights do not prevent them to be persecuted for the crimes against humanity and war crimes they have committed against LGBTQ communities. In terms of
can I just jump in there? My understanding of the government policy, as it was when there was a young man who was trying to get back, was that they would say, if you're a Canadian and you end up on the border, you have to be taken in and they would be prosecuted here. But otherwise, the Canadian government wasn't going to go out of its way to help ISIS members get back into the country.
Well, if that is the case, that is good. But in the same time, we do know some of the people who come back to Canada are still walking around in Canada. Recently, one of the Yazidi women who in Toronto been part of the news. And if what you are saying is the reality, that's good. But on the other hand, when we talk to politicians, for example, Ralph Goodell, we express our concerns. We didn't hear convincing messages from them, but that doesn't mean Liberal Party haven't done good for LGBTQ community in international level. They have done great job. Rob Oliphant is one of those champions who have done amazing work for LGBTQ community all over the world.
What do you think, Yusuf, just to explore that a little more, because I cut you off, but what do you think of the other parties, the Conservatives, the NDP, the Greens? I mean, is there enough conversation about your concerns in the platforms?
Well, I know most LGBTQ community members in Canada are against Conservative Party, but so far, when it's come to international level, Conservatives has been some of the most outspoken people. It's not because they love us so much. It's maybe because they're they see it as enemy of my enemy is my friend, or I don't know what is the reason. But we hear more action from a Conservative Party than Liberal Party. Currently, Scheer condemned. I think it was Uruguay for their crime against LGBTQ community. John Baird has been one of the champions when it's come to LGBTQ community in Muslim majority countries. So I don't know why they are speaking louder when it's come to international communities, but Conservatives has done some good advocacy in Muslim majority countries on behalf of LGBTQ communities.
Okay, and Karine, what do you think about the way that the parties have included these rights in their platform?
I mean, I would say again that they haven't, and a little bit like Faye mentioned earlier, it is 2019, and we're not, it's not 1969. We're not just like figuring out that queer and trans people, LGBTQ, two-spirited people are part of our communities, are part of this world. We are demanding more rights. Like human rights are basic rights for everyone, and what we've noticing is that actually most marginalized communities haven't been part of the policies that the different federal parties have done, whether it's women, whether we're talking about gender equality, we're talking about people with disabilities, we're talking about racialized people. There's been very little that is specific, and that's actually something that it makes me really sad, because it makes me feel like our voices and our experience are not as important, even though there's been so much advocacy and work in the past couple of years.
What would be one thing that could be done that would send a message to you and your community, Karine, that they are listening?
So different organizations have given recommendations. Different organizations across the country have also asked political parties, what are your stance on, things like multiple parents? Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about decriminalization of sex works, of HIV status? And something that we've heard and again is like, oh, interesting. We didn't know about this, but I haven't heard a lot of commitment. And for me, it would be, can you commit to the most marginalized within our own communities? issues, whether they're refugee claimants, whether they're actually current refugees who can't have really good access as part of LGBTQ people in settlement agencies. Are you thinking about youth who are queer or trans and are homeless, and also thinking about affordable housing? How is our national housing strategy actually addressing those things? And I don't see that, and I want to see more.
Okay, Faye?
You know, I think if I were to ask them to do one thing, I think would be to speak about it. You know, I write for Extra Magazine, which is Canada's largest and oldest LGBTQ publication, and they reached out to every party leader to ask them for an interview on LGBTQ issues. Only Elizabeth May took them up on the offer. You know, I think if the only time that we've seen LGBTQ issues brought up in this election is when the Liberals are using them to paint Scheer as a homophobe. And I'm more than happy to expose Scheer for the fact that he has opposed same-sex marriage and opposed trans rights much more recently. But I want them to engage more with our communities. It's really a shame that they haven't taken up opportunities to actually connect with LGBTQ voters and to demonstrate how they are the ones that deserve our votes. They take us for granted, and they do so without really committing to anything significant for our communities.
What about the fact that every single, and Yusuf, I'm going to come to you on this, every single party appears to support repealing the blood ban? Okay, Faye, you're shaking your head so much. I'll come to you next, Yusuf. Faye, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You know, I think the Liberals promised this 4 years ago. What does that say about them that they, you know, 4 years later, they're deciding that this is an issue that they want to care about when there's an election around? They take us for granted in so many ways. And I don't want to take away from the fact the Liberals have done more in the past 4 years than any government in Canadian history. But we also came out of 10 years of the Harper era, where nobody would touch LGBTQ issues. And so, you know, I'm not happy with the blood ban commitment. I think that is an issue that we've had the conversation about. It should have been done 4 years ago. And it's really sad to me that they think that they can buy our votes by committing to ending a ban they already committed to ending.
Okay, Yusuf, let me ask you, go back. What is the one thing they could do, any party could do, that would convince you that you are an important part of the conversation during this election?
Well, first of all, I think if they have LGBTQ agenda incorporated in foreign affairs, as they did to women's rights issues, that will convince me, because as you just mentioned, you know, in Canada, all the political parties are supporting equal rights for blood donation. Well, there is still a lot of activism left in Canada to do for LGBTQ community here at home, but in the same time, LGBTQ community members who are living outside of our borders have right to live as well. We can increase quota for LGBTQ community members, refugees. We can help those people to find jobs in our embassies as a locally hired employees. We can help them to work in our NGOs. We can do so many things to help those people to live a decent life. So my family in the past would not have accepted me if I were not an independent person. But I wasn't just independent, but also I helped my own family members to achieve their goals as well. So now I've been accepted by my family. If we empower LGBTQ community members, as we did empower women, those people will be accepted by their communities. We will send a message that we are not mentally ill. That's what they think we are. We are not mentally ill, but we are mentally healthy. We can work, we can produce, and we can fight for our nation, whether in terms of economy, in terms of diplomacy, in any way. So I think that will convince me if they add more attention into LGBTQ community member living outside of our borders.
All right. Well, that seems like a good place to end. You have your fellow panelists nodding along with you. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. From Ottawa, trans activist Faye Johnstone, Muslim gay activist Yusuf Chelik, and from Montreal, queer activist Karine Mirgiani Jean-Francois. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.